This is the lecture on how to build a bibliographic essay. It'll probably be one of the more important lectures for helping you kind of get ready for the midterm exam. So in this, I'll introduce you to how to put literature together in a research paper, but also how to find the sources that are going to be important for you to include in a literature review. So when I say literature, that terminology in social sciences means it's a body of related work on a topic. So it's all the research that's been done on a given topic. And so in your literature review, what you're doing is you're going through and examining and interpreting the literature that's been done on a topic, and you're organizing it kind of into an argument. So I'll show you an example from a paper that I did, but you don't want to just say, this person said this person said this. Oh, I just thought of an example I can show you. I'm going to pull up a bibliographic essay that I just did related to genes and political attitudes. So this is something I put together for a bibliography, for like a research encyclopedia, right? I'll show you what this is as soon as I find it. Yeah, here you go. So in this document, what I do is, you can see over here kind of how it's laid out. But basically I say, okay, here is a summary of the research that's been done on this topic. And I just say author, summary, author, summary, author, summary, right? And I do a little paragraph that summarizes it here, but then it's just author and then summary. Okay, this is a bibliographic essay. This is something you can put together to help you organize your literature review, but this is not a literature review. This is a bibliographic essay. You don't want to do this, okay? I have an example on iLearn that we'll use to show you what you really want to do. So you might build that bibliographic essay, and then you use that to write a literature review, which is what you're going to do for your midterm exam. The best way to do a literature review is to identify two sets of literature that you can bring together. The reason that that's helpful is because that helps you to make a contribution to the scientific literature without having to know everything that's been done on a certain topic, right? So people go to graduate school and they get PhDs and then they specialize. Like, let's say one of your literatures is conspiracy theories, right? And people will focus their whole graduate training and they'll write a dissertation on conspiracy theories. That's too much to expect you to do at this stage, and it's really kind of too much for anyone to do. You can't like consistently ask questions. I want you to be lifelong learners. It's hard to be a lifelong learner if the learning process involves you becoming a PhD level specialist in a topic. So rather than just focusing on conspiracy theories, if you can focus on two sets of literature, conspiracy theories and social networks, then you don't have to know everything about both of those sets of literature to make a contribution. You just have to know enough to see that there's a gap, right? And you'd say, look, conspiracy theory literature hasn't looked at social networks. Maybe at one time you'll find out that they have, but it seems unlikely. And so then if you're merging those together, then you're making a contribution to two sets of literature, the social networks literature and the conspiracy theory literature. And that gives you more avenues to sort of think about who might want to publish that, or it helps you to kind of make arguments without being an expert on every topic. So for an example, right? Let's say you have this research question, does religion influence presidential vote choice? And your hypothesis is that religious people will be more likely to vote for a religious presidential candidate, not for a Democrat or for a Republican, but for a religious presidential candidate. So what two sets of literature would you need to address to answer that question? Right, so the first thing you would have to, it's right here in the question. Does religion influence presidential vote choice? So the first thing you have to do is do a literature review on how religion influences stuff, not just political stuff, but maybe you could limit it to just how religion influences political stuff. Then the other literature is presidential vote choice. Why do people vote for the people they vote for president? And there's a whole literature about like how partisanship, political ideology, where you're raised, all that stuff influences presidential vote choice. And then you merge. how this religion stuff influences presidential vote choice. So in a literature review, you're looking for what's already been done on the topic so that you can include that, so that you're not answering a question people have already asked. You're looking for maybe somebody's done something on this topic, but they didn't fully answer it, or maybe you don't like the way that they did it. And so you identify those so you can say, look, so-and-so did this, but we're doing it better. And you might look at their methodology. Maybe you think there's flaws in like how they ask the questions or something like that, how they analyze their research. You could improve on that. That's easy to do because lots of the big questions were asked back in the 60s, and we have better techniques today to answer questions than they did back then. So sometimes you can do that, right? You can say, well, I'm answering a similar question, but I'm using a newer methodology. Or maybe you just want to narrow it down. Like maybe broadly it's about conspiracy theories, but maybe there's one aspect of conspiracy theories that you want to look at. So let's practice with this Presidential Studies Quarterly article that I wrote a while back. So it's here in iLearn, and it's called Miles Presidential Studies Quarterly. Okay, so the question one that I want you to look at, identify literature one, identify literature two. So literature one, is it the influence of genes on political behaviors? Is it presidential approval? Is it the influence of genes on presidential approval? Or is it public opinion on science? So again, if you recall from last time how you read a research article, here's the title, here's the author, here's the abstract, then we go to the introduction. And then after the introduction is the literature review. So the first literature is presidential approval. Now we can real quick, I just want you to seek to compare this to the bibliographic essay I showed you earlier, right? I'm not saying Cornell said this, McEwen said this, McEwen and Erickson and Stimson said this, Mueller said this, Ostrom and Simon said this, Stimson said this. No, I say one sentence. Initially, the dynamics of presidential approval were examined as an aggregate phenomenon. Cite, 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 cite. Right? I know what these articles say, sort of, but they're not really important to my argument, but they're important articles. So I start with an opening sentence and I cite more people, right? There's more words in my citation than there are in the sentence. So what you're doing is you're writing a literature review, is you're writing a paragraph explaining what's been done in your own words. And then you cite the people who say that stuff in your own words, right? So once we start looking at how individuals evaluate the president, then they demonstrate this. So it's not really an objective importance of national issues, but the relative importance to that particular individual, right? And so I'm choosing which literature to include and which to not include. I'm deciding how to organize it. There's not this objective thing out there that tells you how to do it. You get to pick. After you look at the research, you pick how to put it all in. I'll show you how you pick, right? Because I cite most of these people because I have to cite them. Because if I don't cite them, then the implication of the reader is that I don't know about that research. So you have to cite the big names first, or at least somewhere in there, to demonstrate that you're familiar with the research. Otherwise, the person who's reading your paper assumes you don't know what you're talking about because you're not even citing the big important research. I'll show you in a minute how you find the big important research. But this is just to kind of give you a sense. So your literature review, as you're preparing for the midterm exam, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs for my first literature review. It's only 4 paragraphs long and it's chock full of citations. Then literature 2, genetic heritability of attitudes and behaviors. 1 paragraph, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs. Right? And I'm citing a whole bunch of people as I put it together. So your literature review is not going to be long in terms of length, but it's going to be packed full of citations and sentences that kind of make the argument as you kind of work through the literature. Just so you know up front, this is a very difficult thing to do As undergraduates, this being your first time doing this, you're going to be terrible at it. And that's okay. You shouldn't feel bad about it. It's like when you're learning to walk, you're not great at walking, but your parents don't like tell you, oh, you're so bad at walking, right? They encourage you even though you're terrible at it. I'll encourage you along the way, but just know that if I say this is good, it's not really good, right? It's like, hey, nice first attempt. And then by the way, this next one is my contribution. I merge them together in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 paragraphs. And then I include a little figure in there to try and help it make sense to people that don't understand genetics. So that's the idea. So your literature review really could be single space, what, like 5 pages, 6 pages? It's not about the length. It's about making sure that you have a good argument that summarizes the literature well. Okay, so then the question then you're going to naturally have is, sorry, we went through this, right? The question you're naturally going to have is, how in the world do I find what to put in my literature review? Remember, it's not about the number of sources. The reason I say you get a C for 10 sources is because you can't do a decent job with less than 10 sources. So it's not that it's about the number of sources, it's just to give you some sense of like in this paper, right? Let's see how many pages of citations I have in this paper. Single spaced. This is just a little paper, right? Okay, so you can see all of my references in this. So there's 1, 2, 3. So I've got basically 3 full single space pages of citations for one paper. You just have to cite a lot of stuff. So if I had the same paper and I cited like 5 people, it wouldn't get published. You got to cite these people, otherwise they assume you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so then how do you know and how do you do this? So the first thing to understand is you don't have time to read everything. So I'll be quite honest with you in this as we go back to my literature review. I've never read, I actually read some of that. I don't know, I've never read that, 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 right? So I'm citing 6 things that I've never read. In this paragraph, I've read a little, not that. I haven't read them, right? I just sort of know what they say. It's kind of like that telephone game, right? Where you see what other people say when they're citing stuff, and so you cite it and say what they say, but I haven't read it. I don't think I've read any of that. Definitely didn't read that. Maybe a little of that. I've never read that. I don't read stuff from the 70s. I did read a little of that. I kind of like him, so I guess I read some stuff from then. Didn't read that. Nope, didn't read. I like them, but I haven't read that. And didn't read that. So I'm citing a lot of stuff that I haven't read, right? So the question is, how do you know what it says if you haven't read it? And how do you know that you should cite it? And how do you know how to put it all together? So that's what I'll show you now. So that's where Google Scholar comes in really handy. Let me just make sure that yeah. So the first one I'll show you is this web of knowledge. I'll just show you how to get there from the BYU Idaho webpage. So if I go to library.byui.edu, then I go for library databases, then I come over here to web, and then I go web of science. I click on that. You have to be on campus or you have to log into the library or whatever to do it. It's behind a paywall. But when you go there, this is really kind of a neat thing. You can choose, you can do a basic search. So let's say that I'm interested in conspiracy theories. That's probably enough to start searching. They didn't find anything on conspiracy theory. I'm just going to go like this because I know that the author is Uzinski, right? Uzinski, is that who wrote that article we read? What drives people? Okay, here's a good one. So now I know that Joseph Uzinski, he's this author, right? Okay, so if I click on his name like that, it's going to show me everything he did. He's been cited 208 times with 179 different articles. And then what we're going to do is see this automatically, it sorts it from earliest to latest. But that's not what we want. We're not actually interested in the most recent research. We're interested in the most important research. So what you do is you sort this list. Tools. No. I've never done this with an author before. So, okay, here we go. Sorted by. How do I change this? Sorted by. Come on. All right, well, so then this is a bad one to show. Okay, I see that he's using conspiratorial beliefs. So we'll search for that. We'll go back to the beginning. Okay, so here instead of going author, I just go topic. Actually, why can't I just go? I'll go all fields. Conspiratorial. I just didn't know the words that they're using, right? Conspiratorial belief. Okay, I search for this. Now it shows me all the stuff that uses conspiratorial belief anywhere in there. So what I do is I go right here, I click times cited, highest to lowest. So it'll sort by the number of times cited. So this one has been cited 184 times. This one has been cited 116 times. So now I know that these are the important ones, right? Then anything that gets cited more than like 20 times is something that is good and perhaps important to use. You don't have to use everything that's been cited that many times, but it's important to look at these, right? And why not throw them in if you can? Of course, some of them might not be helpful. So this one perhaps could be helpful, judgment and decision making. This one could, right? Perhaps this looks like it's more of a measurement thing. So I don't know if I'm interested in the measurement stuff. But this one looks like, okay, this is personality related to conspiracy beliefs. Maybe I want to throw that in. But this one, NASA faked the moon. So this is like, looks like it's laying out an argument for why people reject science. Okay, well that could be like useful to me, right? So I have this one. Now if I go over here to time cited, this is everybody who cited that. So then what I do is I look at who's citing that. And again, I sort them by the number of times cited, highest to lowest. And this one's been cited 191 times. And this is a meta-analysis. So it's going to go through all kinds of stuff, talking about what determines belief in climate change. So that could be important, right? Who believes it, who doesn't believe it. I suppose it depends on if you think of climate change as like a conspiracy theory or not. But this one has this new idea of like conspiracist ideation. So maybe that's important, right? So what I do, let's say that I'm interested in like following this vein or whatever. Like this is Nature, right? So that's maybe important to include. That's a pretty big journal. But it doesn't matter, right? You're just like going to, but let's just say that I want all of these. Let's say I've decided that they've all been cited 100 times or whatever, right? So then I can do this. I select everything on the page and then I go export. And then I'm going to send it over to some kind of citation management software. So I'm going to pause right now to show you how to do that. So if you go to Mendeley, I'll just go to mine. So Mendeley, you can create a free account on here. It's totally free to create a Mendeley account. And what it does is it stores references for you online in a library. And then when you want to write a paper, it creates your bibliography for you. So I have a Mendeley account. And if I go to my account, I'll just sign in real fast. So when I sign into my Mendeley library, it'll show you all of my references. So here's my library. So it shows me the stuff I've published. You won't have that. Okay, so so here's all of them. I have like thousands of, these ones are just my publications. But if I go to master file, this is my master one where I have all kinds of like, I store like 2,000 things here in master file. I also have another folder for genetic research. Okay, so what you do is you create yourself your Mendeley account, right? Then what I can do is I can export all of these, and if I do it to other file formats and I choose RIS, other reference, okay, so let's see. export, not EndNote. I think RefWorks might work. Let's just see. Look at that. I could export all 172. I could export everybody that cited that one article. I could export all of them. Oh, but I guess it just lets me do one page at a time. Whatever, that's 10, right? And then I say send it over to RefWorks. Oh, I don't have RefWorks. All right, what am I going to send it to? Export to, not RefWorks. I haven't done from Web of Science to Mendeley before because I don't usually use Web of Science. But the format is RIS. So I select page, then I choose export to, now it's stuck. Okay. Insights maybe? Huh. All right, well, so maybe this isn't the best way to do it, but this gives you a sense. If you have any of those other ones, you can. Okay, let's try Google Scholar. So scholar.google.com, that's another really simple way. And I'm gonna go conspiratorial. Yes, so let's see conspiracy theories if it shows up. Belief in conspiracy, oh, that's got way more citations than what we had in the other one, right? And if I just go like this and I go cite and then I go, I think I can just go to refman. Yep, and then it creates an RIS file. And then I open that up and then it sends that citation over to my Mendeley library automatically. But again, I can click on this and I can see all of the people that cited that. And well, I'm getting excited. Maybe I want to write a paper on conspiracy theories now. There's a whole lot on this. Right, so let's say I want to cite that one. I do that, I cite it, right, send it over. Here's another kind of fun thing that BYU Idaho does for you. So if you click on this, they used to have like this thing that say, show it to me in BYU Idaho Library. And it would show you similar things, but BYU Idaho Library seems to have gotten rid of that. But here you can see like the article, right? You could download it and stuff. Okay, then I'm writing my paper. So I'm just going to open a blank document in Word, and I could say, people have believed, people use, I don't know if this is true or not, conspiracy theories to help deal with uncertainty. I spelled it wrong. Okay, right? And then right here I push Alt-M on my computer. See if it worked. Alt-M. Okay, here we go. See? Now it pulls up my Mendeley library. Now I can do this. Go to Mendeley, and I can just select. I could select this whole page if I wanted to by pushing Shift and select, and then I go like this, cite. Now it's going to put all the citations in, and it's going to create a bibliography for me. This is how I write papers, right? Okay, so clearly I did too many citations. It's not super happy with me right now. Mendeley is formatting my citations, right? So Mendeley is kind of putting it all together, creating a bibliography for me right now. I think I cited way too many things at once. Having a hard time thinking. Okay, see. So that probably is a bit much to include in as a single citation. All right, so I made it break. But you get the idea. I'm just going to close Word real fast. So you get the idea, right? I'll just show you a better example. Lots of people believe crazy stuff. Alt-M. This time I'll just only cite myself. It'll make it happier. I'll just type in here Miles. And then it'll bring up all of these things that have my name in them. I won't do too many. I'll just do like this many. So then it cites Webb et al. I guess maybe I only did one. And then here on review, no, I got it, sorry. Oh, I didn't know I had EndNote still in here. That's my problem. Okay. So then when I go to Mendeley, let's say that they want me to cite it in like Chicago. I just change it to Chicago. I go insert bibliography, and then it creates my bibliography right there automatically, right? Lots of people, if I want to add more citations, I just go here, Alt-M, and I go miles, and select that one, and then I go miles, and select that one, and then I go miles, and select this one. And I go, okay, it creates my in-text citation how it needs, it creates my bibliography how I need it. And then let's say I need it to be in APA instead. I just choose APA, and it changes everything to be APA. So you're going to want to install Mendeley and want to use it with Word. It's going to take you a little bit of time to figure that out. If it were me, I would focus this week on creating my bibliography, right? So that you have it all together. And then next week, you can focus on how to do your literature review to make it look the way you want it to look for your midterm exam. I just real quick want to go back to iLearn. And so I want to look in the, I want to look at the assignment that you have for the bibliographic essay and kind of show you how you can use that, the articles that I gave you to build your bibliographic essay. So I need to go back. So that's the PowerPoint that we're using now. Not that, not that. Okay, so let's look, this is social networks, right? So here's how I would do it based on that. Okay, David Campbell knows a lot about social networks. Okay, so let's say that I'm reading along and I say, he says the usual suspects, right? So the usual suspects is a good place to begin talking about how social networks matter. And he sort of explains it for you, right, to some extent. So some people say that education is important about whether people participate in politics. So we've got Nye et al. 1996. I'm going to assume that this is important because he quotes it, an entire paragraph in that, right? But this is going to be all about education, right? If I'm thinking about how education might matter, then I'm going to focus on that. But maybe religious attendance, right? Putnam and Campbell have this book about how religious attendance matters because it helps you develop social networks. Here's how social networks matter for mobilization. So let's see. Brady et al. Have carefully examined who is mobilized, who within a given network is asked to engage in political activity. They find political mobilization is self-reinforcing. The people who are most likely to be asked are those who are already the most likely to participate. They call it rational prospecting. Okay, so Brady et al. 1999 seems like it's important. So we'll go to the bottom, right? Because this is about how social networks might influence participation, although maybe we're interested in attitudes more than participation. Norms, there we go. That might be even better than participation. Conviction, there we go. Now we're getting to political knowledge. Yeah, Casey Klostad has some good stuff about how social networks influence whether people know things about politics. So, but conviction might be even more important, right? Like how does the people that you talk to change how much conviction you have in your ideas? So let's look at this Mutz stuff, Mutz 2002, and we'll see how much it's cited. Maybe I would start building off of Mutz because it might be useful for my later argument. So participation, oh, here we go. This one is a book that probably summarizes all of her stuff, right? So I'm going to paste that here in Google Scholar. Been cited 2,000 times, perfect, right? This is a great place to start. So the first thing I do is I cite this, right? That goes into my bibliography. The next thing I do is, no, I don't need to go to her book. Although if I need to know what it's about, your first chapter of the book, this right here that you can read for free, always tells you what the book's about. So you never have to buy a book. You just read this part here and it tells you what the book's about. So you can do that if you want. Now I go, who's citing it? Now again, Google Scholar doesn't sort it specifically by how many times it's been cited, but they try to do it a little bit, right? But this, the dynamics of persuasion, cites it. So this isn't specifically about social networks, but maybe it's going to be important if I'm talking about how people are persuaded to believe things, right? So we want to look within citing articles. So these are the ones that are citing that book. We want to look for network. I want to spell it the right way. Now, all of these are just about social networks into how networks influence attitudes, right? So now I'm way interested in this stuff. So this is about looking at ideology exposure on Twitter, right? So now we're getting into some really good network stuff. And so I would just cite all of this stuff. I would summarize it, right? And make sure I have, but honestly, Google Scholar kind of tells me the abstract there, but if it's not enough, I can click on the article, read the abstract, summarize it for my bibliographic essay, right? So and then I'm just starting to slowly build it. And if I'm citing things that have been cited hundreds of times, some of them thousands of times, then these are things that I need to include in my bibliographic essay, right? So that's how I would do it. I would look through those articles to see what they're saying are foundational pieces on topics that are important to me. Then I use those to find stuff through Google Scholar. So for this week, I would spend my time building a bibliographic essay in this method that I just showed you. Next week, I would make sure that you understand how to use Mendeley to create a literature review, and then you're going to put all that stuff together into paragraphs using Mendeley to make a nice little, summary of the literature and how it's related to how social networks and conspiracy theories are related to each other. Right, so focus your time on that for this week. Okay, I'll be on Campus Wire if you have any questions today. I'm happy to help. All right, good luck, everyone.